It was a warm spring morning in Corvallis, Oregon. 19-year-old Brooke Wilberger was doing a simple task, cleaning the lights outside an apartment complex just across from where her sister lived. The kind of ordinary moment that could belong to anyone's day. But within minutes, everything changed. Her supplies were left behind, her shoes torn from her feet, and Brooke was gone. What happened next would become one of the most haunting mysteries had ever seen. 19-year-old Brooke Wilberger grew up in Oregon in the middle of a lively household as the fifth of 6 children. Her life was filled with activity. She loved basketball, snowboarding, and running. And she carried the kind of energy that made her stand out both at school and in sports. When she was 16, she began dating Justin, a boy she had known since childhood. Both came from devout families within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and their relationship grew alongside their shared faith. While Justin left for his 2-year mission in Venezuela, Brooke headed to Utah to begin her studies at Brigham Young University. Her decision to attend BYU was deeply personal. As a child, Brooke had struggled with speech and didn't begin talking until she was 4. Those early experiences inspired her to pursue a future in speech pathology, a field where she could help others find their voices and their confidence. Despite her soft-spoken nature, she was known for her strong sense of right and wrong, and for speaking up when it mattered. By the end of her freshman year, she was eager to spend the summer back home. Like many students, she also wanted to earn some extra money. Her sister Stephanie, who managed the Oak Park Apartments in Corvallis with her husband, offered her the perfect opportunity. Brooke could stay with them for a few days, pick up shifts around the complex, and still have plenty of time to catch up with friends and family. On the morning of May 24, 2004, Brooke was seen starting her tasks at the complex. At 10 a.m., Stephanie noticed her outside filling a bucket with water to clean the outdoor lights. The sisters had planned to meet for lunch later that day. But when the clock pushed past 10 p.m. and Brooke hadn't shown up, concern quickly took hold. Stephanie stepped outside with her children, expecting to find Brooke chatting with a resident or finishing a chore. Instead, she came across something unsettling. The bucket of water and cleaning supplies were abandoned near a lamppost. Nearby lay Brooke's flip-flops, broken and caked with mud, as though she had been dragged out of them while resisting. Alarmed, Stephanie and her husband searched frantically before discovering that Brooke's phone, wallet, and bag were still locked inside her car. By 3 p.m., they had no doubt something was terribly wrong. The police were called. From the start, investigators treated Brooke's disappearance with urgency. Lieutenant Ron Noble later explained that while adults normally had the freedom to come and go, this case was different. Brooke was not the kind of person to vanish without telling anyone. Reports from nearby residents confirmed those fears. Some had heard a scream around 10:30 that morning, but no one had seen what happened. As word spread, the search intensified. Officers canvassed the complex, spoke to neighbors, and began checking the long list of registered sex offenders in the area, nearly 2,000 names in total. Brooke's boyfriend Justin was also contacted, though he was quickly ruled out. He was thousands of miles away in Venezuela, his alibi beyond question. For the Wilberger family, the reality was unthinkable. Brooke was deeply rooted in her faith, her family, and her plans for the future. She had dreamed of marriage, of raising children, and of building a life full of love and service. Now, Her sudden disappearance left not just her loved ones, but an entire community shaken. People were asking the same haunting question. If Brooke could vanish in broad daylight, who might be next? Brooke's disappearance quickly grew into one of the most publicized cases in Oregon's history. Within days, hundreds of volunteers had joined the effort, scouring fields, rivers, and wooded areas. The FBI stepped in to assist local police, and sightings of Brooke were reported from towns across Oregon and even beyond state lines. Each report carried a flicker of hope, but one by one, they led to dead ends. Just a few days after she vanished, investigators turned their attention to a man named Sunku Kim, a 30-year-old living with his parents, about 80 miles from Corvallis. Kim was known to be reclusive, and his name had surfaced in connection with a string of bizarre crimes, stealing women's underwear from college dormitories, including at Oregon State University, not far from where Brooke had last been seen. A search of his home uncovered a staggering collection, thousands of pairs of stolen underwear, along with tens of thousands of disturbing images and videos stored on his computer. Many depicted violent sexual acts, scenes of torture, and degrading assaults. Even more troubling was a file on his desktop. Written shortly after Brooke's disappearance, it read like a twisted manual for carrying out a sexually motivated crime and escaping undetected. It described what clothes to wear, what tools to carry, and how to avoid leaving evidence. For a moment, detectives felt they might be closing in on Brooke's abductor, but the evidence just didn't fit. Computer records, phone data, and receipts proved that Kim had been at home with his father shopping at a store at the exact time Brooke went missing. Though his activities revealed a deeply disturbing pattern, he was ruled out as a suspect in her case. Kim would later serve 7 years in prison for burglary and related charges. For Brooke's family, the disappointment was crushing. The investigation had seemed to gather momentum, only to circle back to uncertainty. Days stretched into weeks, and then into months. Statistically, the hope of finding Brooke alive diminished with each passing day. Still, detectives pressed forward. A dark green minivan had appeared in multiple tips, and they began focusing their efforts on tracing it. Witnesses recalled a 1997 model with Minnesota plates, often seen circling near Oregon State University the day Brooke vanished. One university employee, Bob, noticed the van in a parking lot and watched as the driver engaged a female student in conversation. The student was so disturbed by the encounter that she later reported it to university staff. Another young woman described a similar experience. She was walking when the same vehicle pulled in front of her. The man got out, asked for directions, and then slid open the van's back door. Alarm bells rang in her mind, and she hurried away before anything could happen. A man named Brian, who had previously called 911 about the van's reckless driving, was also asked to come forward and share what he had seen. Piece by piece, a pattern was forming. But police still didn't know who was behind the wheel, or if the van was truly tied to Brooke's disappearance. As the months passed, the search parties for Brooke Wilberger began to dwindle. The community's initial surge of energy slowly faded as life pushed forward. Yet for Brooke's family, the absence remained unbearable, and every day, without answers, deepened the weight of uncertainty. Then in November 2004, more than 1,400 meters away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a shocking incident reignited the investigation. A woman named Dara was driving with her daughters when they saw a young woman completely naked and hysterical running across a busy road. She stumbled toward a nearby restaurant, desperately pulling at the locked doors trying to get inside. Dara immediately pulled over, got the young woman into her car, and called 911. The victim, a 22-year-old foreign exchange student from Russia, recounted a terrifying ordeal. She had been walking when a man grabbed her from behind, pressed a knife to her throat, and dragged her into his vehicle. The attacker, she said, was a tall, broad white man with a shaved head and beard. He sexually assaulted her, bound her with her own shoelaces, and then stopped at an apartment complex. While he stepped away from the car, she somehow managed to break free and run for her life. The student's description of the man's car stood out. A distinctive two-door red vehicle with floral interior upholstery and a stuffed toy hanging by the window. Within hours, authorities had a name: Joel Patrick Courtney. Courtney, a 38-year-old father of three, was found only a few blocks away, sitting in his car with a crack pipe and a knife. His background quickly came to light. Joel was a convicted sex offender, having served time in 1991 for sexual assault, with a long history of criminal behavior scattered across multiple states. Courtney's life was marked by chaos. His sister later revealed that as a child, Joel had tested with a genius-level IQ. Yet by the age of 11, he was already using hard drugs. As a teenager, he delved into Satanism, dropped out of high school, and cycled in and out of juvenile detention. By 18, he had already committed a sexual assault. She even confessed that, in her youth, Joel would creep into her room at night, choke her, and attempt to rape her. For a time, things seemed to stabilize when Joel met Rosie, the woman who would become his wife. They had 3 children together, and Rosie tried to believe he could change. But drugs and alcohol dragged him deeper into violence and instability. Rosie had recently filed a restraining order after Joel choked her, and his life had once again spiraled into heavy drinking, crack cocaine, and repeated arrests for DUIs. When he was arrested in Albuquerque, he was charged with rape, kidnapping, and battery of the Russian exchange student. During his interrogation, one sharp-eyed detective noticed disturbing parallels between this attack and the unsolved case of Brooke Wilberger in Oregon. Both victims were young, blonde, and taken in broad daylight. Both had been overpowered by a tall man, tied up, and attacked in chillingly similar ways. That detective reached out to the investigators in Oregon. The response was immediate. Yes, they had heard of Joel Courtney. In fact, records showed that on the very day Brooke disappeared, Joel had been in Corvallis with his family. Not long after, the case took a dramatic turn in the public eye. Television stations interrupted their broadcast with breaking updates announcing that investigators now believe Brooke had been murdered and that the man being held in an Albuquerque jail was the one responsible. Though investigators still had not recovered Brooke Wilberger's body, she was now presumed dead. With Joel Courtney sitting behind bars in New Mexico, authorities in Oregon spent months meticulously gathering evidence to build their case. One of the most critical breakthroughs came when investigators tracked down the vehicle Joel had been driving at the time Brooke disappeared. It was the very same dark green minivan witnesses had reported speeding around Corvallis that day. Forensic teams stripped the van down to its shell, swabbing every surface and analyzing every fiber. The wait for results was long, but when they finally came back, they were conclusive. Brooke's DNA was found inside the van, and strands of her blonde hair were discovered tucked into a hairband inside one of Joel's bags. From the samples, investigators were also able to determine that Brooke had been sexually assaulted. In the spring of 2005, prosecutors announced a major development. A Benton County grand jury had returned a sweeping indictment against Joel Patrick Courtney. The charges were staggering, 19 counts in total, including 14 counts of aggravated murder under alternative theories, 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping, 1 count of first-degree rape, 1 count of first-degree sexual abuse, and 1 count of first-degree sodomy. Under Oregon law, aggravated murder carried the possibility of the death penalty. Still, there was a complication. Courtney was already facing charges in New Mexico for the brutal abduction and rape of the Russian exchange student. Prosecutors made it clear that it could be some time before he was extradited back to Oregon to face trial for Brooke's murder. The contrast between the two cases was stark. In New Mexico, the victim had managed to escape and survive, giving police the chance to capture Courtney. In Oregon, Brooke had never returned home. Even with the mounting evidence, Joel continued to deny knowing Brooke at all. Prosecutors later revealed that when he was presented with the 19-count indictment, he spent the afternoon laughing about it with other inmates. Despite his outward confidence, signs of weakness began to surface. During a visit with his mother in jail, Joel's reaction to questions about Brooke's death revealed a chilling certainty that he would never face consequences. By January 2007, Joel's attorneys attempted to delay proceedings, claiming his mental health issues made him incompetent to stand trial. After extensive evaluations, the court ruled that he was in fact competent. For Brooke's family, it was a wave of relief. Her mother later recalled receiving the news while driving. She pulled over, got out of her car, and danced in the street, grateful that he would finally face justice. But before Oregon could try him for Brooke's murder, Joel had to answer for what he had done in New Mexico. Joel Courtney eventually pleaded guilty to the kidnapping and rape of the Russian exchange student. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but even at sentencing, he showed nothing but contempt for the court, mocking the process and disrespecting the judge. For investigators in Oregon, his arrogance only fueled their determination. They were certain he knew where Brooke Wilberger was, and they vowed they would find her, no matter what it took. By 2009, 5 years had passed since Brooke's disappearance. Joel's trial in Oregon was approaching, and with it, the possibility of the death penalty. Prosecutors knew they might only get Brooke's remains if they offered a deal. For months, Joel refused, playing mind games. But after suffering repeated beatings from other inmates and unable to access the anxiety medication he wanted, he began negotiating. He had used Brooke's body as leverage all these years. Now, he demanded to serve the rest of his New Mexico sentence near his family, and wanted the death penalty taken off the table. In exchange, he would plead guilty and reveal where Brooke was. With Brooke's family desperate for answers, prosecutors agreed. More than 5 years after she vanished, the missing person posters came down. Brooke had finally been found. Courtney led investigators to a remote abandoned road about 12 miles west of Corvallis. Hidden under a fallen tree on private property, her remains lay where he had left them. Dental records confirmed her identity, and her mother knew instantly it was her daughter. Brooke's silver Christmas watch, a gift from her mom, was still on her wrist. For the Wilbergers, it was bittersweet relief. They were grateful justice was served, and that Joel would spend the rest of his life in prison without parole. In court, Joel confessed. He admitted he had been driving around Corvallis that May morning hunting for a victim. He tried to lure 2 other students first, but when he saw Brooke working alone, he changed his plan. Posing as a delivery driver, he got close enough to abduct her at knife point. He bound her with tape, sexually assaulted her, and drove her deep into the woods. He kept her alive overnight before finally bludgeoning her to death. Later, he admitted he hadn't intended to kill her at first, but when she fought back fiercely, he decided she could not be allowed to live. He concealed her body so carefully that had he not confessed, she likely never would have been found. Local residents were stunned. The crime had taken place in the quiet Benton County coastal range, not far from small-town stores and family homes. People who lived nearby said they couldn't believe such violence had unfolded in their backyard. Joel Courtney never apologized to Brooke's family. He showed no remorse. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His sister Dina later spoke publicly, acknowledging the family's heartbreak. She said that from the very first whisper of Joel's involvement, they prayed that if he was guilty, he would confess, and that Brooke would be found. When that day finally came, she wept. Some investigators have suggested Joel may have been responsible for other crimes, possibly even a serial killer, with the FBI connecting him to at least 3 additional unsolved assaults and murders in Oregon. One prosecutor even compared him to Richard Ramirez, the infamous Night Stalker, describing Joel as one of the most evil people she had ever encountered. For Corvallis, Brooke's case became a defining moment. Her mother took the stage at the Lel Stewart Center, thanking the countless volunteers and strangers who had spent years searching. The case had touched nearly everyone in the community, uniting them in grief and perseverance. She reminded everyone that this wasn't about closure, but about love, the kind Brooke gave so freely. The family vowed to honor her by living as she would have with kindness, strength, and compassion. But the pain never left. Brooke's sister Stephanie later admitted she relives that morning constantly, replaying the hours before Brooke disappeared and wondering if anything could have been different. She said no matter how much time passes, she will never make peace with it. Brooke Wilberger was just 19 years old, a college student with her whole life ahead of her. In the span of minutes, she went from cleaning lights at an apartment complex to being caught in a nightmare she didn't deserve. And though justice was served, the loss of her life remains a wound that time can never heal. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.